We focus in our sport a lot about stuff that can go wrong, how we can fix it. Our sport has the potential to be pretty dangerous. It's got the potential for lots of things to go wrong, and it's really important that we get a lot of information out there to stop that and stay alive. And last year I stood up here and I talked about my plan, my strategy, the 6 things I was going to do through last year that I hoped would keep me alive, and I encouraged you to do the same. And now I'm going to switch it round, and instead of focusing perhaps on some of those negative aspects with our sport that we do need to counter, that we do need to look at if we want to have a long and safe time within the sport, I'm going to switch it around, and I'm going to dwell not on the bad but on the good. And I want to share with you some ways that I have used and that I hope you can use to live your dreams and find the fantastic things that we do in our sport and in our lives, find these opportunities for good. And hopefully we'll be able to live our dreams. And if we do that, we're going to feel good. If we strive for impossible goals, if you achieve something that once for you was impossible, then it's a fantastic feeling. And that's actually what lots of us really want to do somewhere deep down in our hearts. And actually we just go through day to day in life, and very often it never kind of quite happens, and we never kind of quite get around to it. And of course, if you decide to take this journey, on the way there's going to be lots of ups and downs. It's not always going to go right. But overall, I believe you'll be happier by doing it. And I'm going to cover more on happiness as we go through this. But ideally, I'm going to try and help you to find a way to achieve something awesome, to encourage you to push your own boundaries, to step outside of your own comfort zones, to make your impossible, your dream, something that you can achieve, something that you can live. So what am I really going to tell you? I'm going to tell you what I wish I knew when I embarked on a whole series of crazy adventures. When I was doing things that people told me that I could not do, either because perhaps I might not have been allowed to do it, and perhaps I might have climbed over the fence anyway on occasions, or because they thought I couldn't do it and I had to somehow find a way to prove them wrong. I'm going to talk to you about five pillars that I use to define impossible and to set an efficient path to make that something that you can achieve. I'm going to be honest, though, that this isn't for everybody. This will not work out for everybody. Many of you will decide that this might well be a plan that you decide to take forward, but it might not actually work out for you. Not everybody has the drive to carry it through. But I will give you the tools. I don't want to be the kind of guy that stands up here, tries to inspire and motivate you, and 10 minutes after I've finished, you kind of feel a bit good and then you forget about it and never take any action. I want to give you the tools that will allow us to apply directly to you and give you a way that you can take action and actually do something about it, and hopefully one day you can live your dreams too. And of course, I'm going to throw in a few exciting videos in there as well, just to keep it a bit of fun. You don't have to listen to me the whole time. So I talked about 5 things that I focus on. I'm going to start with the first one. The first one is finding and defining your impossible. It's about understanding what is impossible. What does that mean to you? Is it impossible because nobody's achieved it, or because you haven't achieved it? Is it impossible because nobody has proved that that can actually happen? Now, of course, not all impossibles are equal. Infinity plus 1 is smaller than infinity plus 100. So 46 years ago, man had never set foot on the moon. It was impossible. And then somebody went and did it. Now nobody has set foot on Neptune. It's impossible. It's impossible until we go and do it. But I would argue that it's harder to set foot on Neptune than it is to set foot on the moon. So actually, maybe some of these things that once were impossible, whether it's something that you've never achieved or that nobody has ever achieved that you still see as impossible, might perhaps be something that you can achieve. And of course, all the very best dreams are often the ones that are impossible. So ask yourself, what do you want now? What do you want in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years' time? What do you want when you're lying on your deathbed and you're looking back at life? And what are those things that you wish you had done? Those things that you sort of put off, and I'll maybe get round to that next year, or yeah, before I'm 40, I'll make sure I do that. And suddenly, before you know it, it's all kind of there, and you've sort of missed out on those opportunities. If you were younger, of course you would have done it. Well, while you're younger, perhaps it's now time to find your dream and find your impossible. I want to talk about this guy. In 1906, he observed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And not only that, and for those that grow their own vegetables in their garden, you'll particularly appreciate this bit. He observed that 20% of pea pods contained 80% of peas. Now, many of you will have heard of Vilfredo Pareto and his 80-20 rule. But actually, who cares? So what? What does it mean to you? Well, actually, by being one of those people that when actually somebody turns around in the pub and sort of talks about going skydiving and say, yeah, I'll definitely do it, I'll definitely do it. Only 20% of those people actually go and do that. Only 20% of those people, are the ones that stand up, they embrace their fear, they conquer, they achieve. And by being sat in this room, you are already in that 20% of people that will stand up, that will do something that is particularly difficult and will achieve. So you are far more likely to be able to live your dreams. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember when I went and made my first jump, I was absolutely petrified. I turned up for the course, not knowing if I would finish it, not knowing if I would actually jump. I remember finishing the ground training, putting our gear on and walking to the plane. And I didn't know if at the end of that walk, I would actually have what it took to get in that plane. And once I got in that plane, I really didn't know if I would be able to jump out. And I ended up being a crap student. I did 34 static line jumps before my first free fall, and then went on to AFF and went on from there. But all of us in here, we're in that 20% that finds a way, no matter how hard it is, to achieve. So you are already in that subset of people that can make your impossible something that you can make a reality for you. Because for most people, their impossible is doing that one skydive, and many never achieve it. So how do we actually establish what that is? I want to encourage you to embrace the crazy. Some of the very, very best ideas are the craziest ideas. And I sit there often with my Jump for Heroes teammates, and we're planning our next expedition. And very often, we'll all band around a few ideas. And some of them will be really crazy, that crazy that we're really not going to do them. And it's not uncommon, particularly for my teammates, to roll their eyes when I come up with an idea and look at me thinking I am absolutely mental. And sometimes those ideas really are absolutely mental. But sometimes, just sometimes, you can find solutions and they pay off. The really impossible is often the really crazy. Yet sometimes, if you really work it out, if you really want to do it, you can find solutions to make those something that you can achieve. I want you to embrace your inner child. And I want to tell you a story about my niece. This is Freya. Like all kids do, Freya lost her front teeth. And this happened at night. And so what she did was she put them out for the tooth fairy. And in the morning, she woke her brother up. They lifted up to have a look to find what the tooth fairy had left, only to find that the tooth fairy hadn't been and her teeth were still there. Because of course Freya had broken the golden rule of telling her parents that her teeth had come out, and the tooth fairy only finds that out through the parents. So the next night she did the same, and in the morning they looked and found some coins and some fairy dust. Full of excitement, they rushed to the sofa, and Freya got the fairy dust, sprinkled it on her brother and on her, and they both dived off the sofa head first. Because everybody knows that fairy dust makes you fly. Now, you might guess what happened in the end, that it didn't work and they landed on their faces, but all was fine. But the point is, as kids, they're open to possibility. They're open to what can happen. Not as we grow older, we learn more about life and we learn about what can't happen. But if you can embrace your inner child, you can start looking through their eyes, and you can open your mind to possibility rather than narrowing your mind through impossibility. And then once you've found and defined what it is that you want to do, once you've found and defined your impossible, that's when you need to go for it, you need to commit, and you need to make that happen. So we've talked about finding and defining your impossible, embracing the crazy and embracing your inner child. Now I'm going to go on to the second part, redefining that as something that you can achieve, redefining your dream and making sure that you can achieve that. You've got to decide how important this is for you. If you want to walk on the moon, but you're someone that's scared of getting in a plane or don't want to get in a spaceship, well, obviously that's not going to happen. Sometimes there's going to be some really difficult things that you're going to have to do along the way, and you've got to commit to making that happen. Incredible dreams require incredible acts. You need to believe in yourself. You need to believe that you can do it. And I want to have a look at how we think about we're going to make that happen. Now, this is what most people do. They have their feelings, and they look about them, and they see things, and they take that in. And based on how they then feel, they take action. And that works out how they look at something and what actually happens in the end. Now, I'm going to suggest that we flip this around the other day. We decide what it is we're going to do. And no matter what, we take the action following that. And that's going to influence how we feel. That's going to make us happier. That's going to empower us to achieve. And it's going to help with our self-esteem. So I'm going to give you an example of how that might work. Let's say in 1 month's time, we're going to enter a 10K race. And so we know to do that, we need to go out every day for the next month for a run. And we've been doing this for a week. And then after a week, we wake up and we're just not feeling that good. And it's dark outside, and it's cold, and it's raining. And we've been doing this already for a week. What does 1 day off matter? And so we take action and we hit that snooze button. And we decide that we are not going out. Well, actually, flip it round the other way. Decide that even when it's cold and wet and raining and it's dark and you don't feel like going, you will go. And you take action by getting up, getting out of bed and going for that run. And no matter how cold and dark and miserable it is, when you come back, you will have taken action, you will have achieved, you will feel better. And you're more likely to every day make sure you go on that run. So flip it round, think about it the other way to how most people do, and you're far more likely to be the person that achieves what you want to achieve. And now I want to focus on inhibiting perceptions. And we need to defeat these, and we want to focus on yours and those of others. Now with you, to tackle these, we need to focus on defining success. If you know what success is, if you've got a real clear picture of success, you're far more likely to get there and achieve it and create a roadmap for it. Is your success turning up at the start line for that 10K? Is it just getting round halfway and that's it? Is it completing that 10K? Is it getting your personal best time? Whatever that success is, defining specifically what that success is. You can then develop a roadmap for it. Understand what you need to be doing for your run every week. What you need to be doing as far as times go, as far as how far you need to run. And you can break down your goal into lots of goals. If you can break down those goals into lots of goals, then you get success as you hit each one of those goals. And the more success you have along the way, the more likely you are to stick to your plan and to keep going. And then what about others? For sure, there are haters in this life. And there will be a lot of haters, or a number of haters, within your life. Now, the easy thing for me to tell you is to just get rid of those haters from your life. The reality is, we probably all know people that for whatever reason are embedded within our life that we can't get rid of. So there are two ways to focus on this. The first one is to minimize time with them. Well, that kind of is fairly obvious. But the second one is to find simple and quick win solutions. Prove to these people that no matter what, you can achieve this, you will achieve this, you will give it the very best you have to achieving this. Find those quick wins along the way to prove to them that no matter what, you will achieve this, whether they're behind you or not. So minimize the time with them, prove to them that you are going to do it. I want to give you an example. We had a plan to produce a video that would get 1 million views on YouTube. People told us we couldn't do it. We came up with a bit of a plan of how to do it. We went to Italy, we did some jumps. We came back, we looked at what we had. It wasn't enough. We went back and we did some more. And this video that's only a little over 2 minutes long ended up taking a little under 25 jumps to put it all together. We were flying lines that people weren't sure we could or should fly. And when you see it, you'll recognize that compared to what's out there now, they're fairly tame. But the fact is, people said we couldn't do it. We found ways to achieve, to overcome. And I'd like to show you this video now. This video that we had a dream goal of achieving 1 million views at has just under 2 million views now on YouTube. So we've found and defined our impossible. We've redefined it as something that we can and will achieve. And now we're going to look at accepting failure. Now this kind of sounds a little bit counterintuitive. It certainly did to me when I first looked at this. But if you can accept failure, you can mitigate against it. You can drive forward, and then you can succeed. Because if you understand what failure looks like, you can understand the route to failure, you can understand what those early warning signs are going to look like. And then you can mitigate against that. And you can see along your plan, along your path, as you're deviating off it, you can see earlier on when failure is likely to happen and bring yourself back. Now I'm talking about failure because that's what society, particularly in the Western world, tends to focus on in this aspect. But it's not really failure, and I think that's a defeating mindset. Actually, this is solving problems. These are about experiments. These are experiments along our way to achieving what we want to achieve. It's not failure if we just get it wrong here or there. These are just experiments. Did the Wright brothers fly on their first attempt, or did they crash? A lot. When Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, did it happen the first time when he tried to make that happen? You know, these are just attempts. These failures, these are experiments along that journey that you're taking. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to get things wrong along that journey as long as you learn from it. But if you can identify these early on as well, then actually they might not even go wrong, and you might be able to use them to steer back onto that track anyway. But if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's just one part of that journey. So we've found and defined our impossible. We've embraced the crazy. We've embraced that inner child. We've redefined that dream that we have and found a way that perhaps we can make it work. We've accepted, though, that maybe it won't, but actually along the way there will be experiments, and not all of them might work out. And now we're going to look at how we mitigate risk. We've got to really ask ourselves how important this is. Is your dream really worth it at any cost? And how can you mitigate those risks and reduce them to an acceptable level? Now, when we talk about risk, particularly in skydiving, base jumping, lots of other air sports, people focus on the dangers that are involved. And of course, we have to understand the dangers, particularly, if there are dangers that we could be focusing on. We've got to mitigate those as much as we can. But there are plenty of other risks. Everything we do in life has a risk. And one of the key things that you need to look at if you're going to achieve something that really is difficult to achieve is that economic term of opportunity cost. Because you're going to have to put a lot of time, energy, investment, possibly finances into all of this. This is all stuff that you could be putting into your career, your business, or just time and energy that you could otherwise be investing with your friends and your family. And you've got to look at that opportunity cost. Is it worth it? Is striving for this, going for this impossible dream, is it worth that opportunity cost of spending that time and money that you could be doing elsewhere? And if it's not, then you're unlikely to succeed. At somewhere along that road, you'll probably give up. So you've got to ask yourself that really tough question about how much you really, really want that dream. And if you can answer that question that it is worth it, that opportunity cost, then we're going to be getting somewhere. We've got to analyze that risk. Decide, is the risk that you're taking worth what you're going to get out of it at the end? You've got to consider all of those risks. And if it's not worth what you're going to get out of it at the end, that doesn't mean we give up. This is an experiment along our way. We find a way to mitigate those risks until they are at a level that we can accept those risks and we can take that amazing thing that we're going to get at the end. And it's worth that risk. And just because nobody else has been able to mitigate that risk on this particular adventure you're going on down to an acceptable level, it doesn't mean that it can't be done. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to find a way. It just might take you a little bit longer than everybody else has been working on it to find the way yourself. If you really want it, then there will be a way somewhere to be able to reduce that risk down to that acceptable level for you. So how do we do it? Well, perhaps there's ways to hedge our bets. But one of the key areas that I want to focus on is knowledge. Now, a lot of people say that knowledge is power. Now, I don't think that that's quite right. It's about what you do with that knowledge. It's about how you apply that knowledge. It's about the second and third order effects of what you do with it. There's some incredibly bright people out there, people far more intelligent than I am. And some of these people get through life and they never achieve their dreams, their goals. They don't take many risks. But they're so intelligent, they've got so much knowledge. But it's about having that ability to analyze that, to apply it in the area that you need to apply it. Thinking about what happens when you do that. So what? What's the second order effect? What's the third order effect? It's about applying that knowledge. And that's what's powerful. So it's not the knowledge itself, but what you decide to do with that knowledge. But despite all of this risk mitigation, things still go wrong. No matter how much you plan, you come up with all these different scenarios that you've been looking at, you're still going to hit experiments along the way that perhaps don't always work out. Perhaps like this one that happened to me. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Sometimes people fly really fast competition canopies directly at you and maybe break a few lines and maybe bits of ourselves incorporated. I've had teammates land in trees, crash on the side of mountains. Yeah, absolutely, something's gone seriously wrong along the way. But if we hadn't already mitigated risks, if we hadn't come up with plans, things could have been far, far worse. So even though you mitigate risks, some of those risks, are going to come back to haunt you. But you've got to accept that some of them might just happen. But when they do, remember that they're experiments along the way. And if you hadn't mitigated, you hadn't planned, you hadn't thought about the different scenarios that could happen, then perhaps it could have been far, far worse. You need to mitigate these risks. So we found and defined our impossible, embraced the crazy. We've looked at it through the eyes of a child. We've redefined it as something that we can achieve. We've accepted that we're going to have experiments along the way, and these experiments might fail, but also by knowing that these experiments are happening along the way, we're going to see when we come off that track and hopefully bring us back onto it before it fails too badly. We're going to mitigate that risk as much as we can. We're going to understand those risks. We're going to get lots of knowledge, and we're going to apply that knowledge. And lastly, we're going to learn from success. Because if you want to achieve incredible dreams, you need to surround yourself with incredible people. Now I want to start on this by looking at focus. Success does need focus. But a lot of people misinterpret focus as following one course until success. Now the principles of that are absolutely sound, but it's more about drive. It's about driving forward instead of focus. We can't just focus on one thing forever. In 6 months, you will be a different person. In a year, 2 years, 10 years' time, you will be a different focus, and you'll be a different person, and where you've been focusing will need to change. But if you've got that drive, it's that drive despite the focus that will get you through the bad times, that will get you through the hard times, will get you through that day when you just really want to throw in the towel. It's the one that's going to get you out of bed and make you do something to achieve your dreams. This is now about transitioning you from somebody that has potential to being a champion, to being a record holder, to being the next Shannon Pilcher, the next Dan BC, the next Jay Maletsky, the next Olav Zipser. It's about transitioning you to be there. And as we're going to learn from success, and we've got to find mentors, we've got to find people that can help us along that way. It's going to fast forward the reality of achieving our dream so much faster. And you've got to reach out to these people, and you've got to ask. You'll be surprised at how many of them, when you reach out to them, when you ask, will actually say yes. Of course, there will always be people that just don't have the time. And there will always be those other people that, no matter how nice you are, there will always be the kind of person that will say no. But you'll also be surprised about how many will say yes, how many will help you out. So you need to ask yourself, has whatever it is you want to achieve, has this impossible? Is this something that has been achieved before? And if the answer is yes, and it's just an impossible for you, but somebody has achieved it, then go to that person, those people. Ask them how they made success, how they got there, what it was that they did, and what you need to look at, what experiments are going to fail along the way that you need to know about. And if it hasn't been achieved, then find out who's got the closest to achieving that. Or find out who might have similar sorts of expertise that you need and learn from them, because there will always be someone out there that has some sort of expertise over and above the expertise that you have that can help you get there. Even if in that field you are the leading expert, there will be other things that other people know that can help you get there. And look at alternative experts. Look at people that know about teamwork, about leadership, about psychology. There will always be other people out there that can help you. And then look at people that know absolutely nothing about what you're going to do. That different mindset, that different way they look at it. This is something that is an impossible that we're trying to achieve. So let's look at impossible ways. Let's look at how somebody who has no idea about it might accomplish it. If you're an instructor, ask your students. Interestingly, they have a completely different take on lots of things that happen compared to you. When you've got experience in an area, sometimes you forget some of the really key fundamental basics. So I want to give you an example. I want to give you an example of a skydiving team that has followed this in their own way and see how it can apply. And then I'm going to go and look at an example that you specifically can apply yourself. So I'm going to focus on a team called Team 97, who later became Sebastian XL. And 20 years ago, they started to put their team together. They actually went live then in 96, and their team name being Team 97 because that was initially their goal. They're probably one of the most successful UK skydiving teams in the last 20 years. So their goal, their impossible, was to win nationals, to go to the World Championships and eventually stand on that podium at the World Championships. They had a dream goal of scoring a 20-point average. So they redefined this as something that they could achieve. They embraced their crazy. Despite having no support, they quit their jobs and they went full-time. They committed to this, and it wasn't until they committed to going full-time. For some of them were already living in the States, others moved out there. They moved to the drop zone, and by doing this, They picked up sponsorship when the sponsors saw that they would do whatever it took to achieve their dream. The sponsors came on board, and hence they then became Sebastian XL. They decided what they were going to do. They took action, and they felt good. By feeling good with that, that came back round, and they achieved more, and they achieved more. And they proved the haters wrong, their successes compounded, and their inhibiting perceptions were conquered. Now, they accepted failures along the way. They had experiments that didn't work out. They solved problems. They had a particular problem with one of the blocks, block 3. They looked at how the other teams were doing it, decided it wasn't for them. Perhaps there was a better way they could do it. And they developed their own technique for that. And they refined some of the techniques for some of the other blocks that they were doing. So they looked at these alternatives. They refined their exits. To begin with, they weren't too strong, but they became one of the strongest exiting teams as a result. They knew what failure looked like, and they knew that they needed to get onto that podium. So they mitigated their risks by going full-time, committing 100%. They put everything they had into this. They trained exceptionally hard. And they knew that they could not afford any time out for injury or illness. So despite the cost in the States, they've got health insurance. They learned from success, and despite the lack of money, they realized they needed more. They wanted to leverage their achievements that they had. So not only did they get a coach like most skydiving teams do, but they got a manager. And they even hired a sports psychologist. They knew they had to do everything they could to make that dream a reality. So how did it work out for them? Well, they won nationals. They got their dream goal of that 20-point average. And it wasn't until the World Championships of 2003 that they missed out on being on the podium to the Norwegians by 1 point. And all of those team members go on to achieve great things now. So, what about you? How can you apply this? What is your impossible? I want you to take just 1 minute now to have a think about what your impossible might be. Perhaps talk to the people next to you, but think about what your impossible, what your dream might possibly be. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask anybody. Okay, I'm going to run through an example of something that could apply to you. Now, it doesn't matter if you're sat in this room and you only have 100 or 200 jumps. This could completely apply to you. So we're going to find and define our impossible. And I'm going to suggest that that is winning UK national championships. Now, if we want to make this easy, perhaps we'll look at something like style and accuracy or canopy formations. Not because they're easy, but because the reality is there are less teams involved, and some of them aren't quite training as hard as perhaps some of the other parts of skydiving. But, of course, we're going to embrace the crazy. We're going to make this hard. And the chairman said this morning that 75 four-way teams entered four-way nationals in 2014. So probably be something similar to that, or maybe even more over the next few years. So let's make our goal, let's define it, that in 2 years' time, to win four-way formation skydiving nationals in the UK, the largest nationals in the world. So let's redefine this to make it something that we can achieve. And again, you've got to decide how important is this to you. If you really want to win nationals, then you're going to really need to invest. Now, the reality is that almost without exception, the team that wins four-way nationals in this country is the team with the most experience that does the most number of jumps together as a team in a year. Obviously, there are other factors like having a good coach, wind tunnel time, that sort of thing. But pretty much without exception, if you can put a team together that will do the most jumps, getting the most experience together, you will win nationals. So we're going to redefine our possible, our dream, as a 2-year plan, making 600 jumps a year for the next 2 years. And I believe if you do that with the right coach, wind tunnel time, that kind of thing as well, then I believe you can have success and you will win nationals in 2 years. So of course we're going to accept failure along the way. We can't control what other teams do. If you start to put a team together over here and someone over there does that and goes, I know, they're doing 600 jumps, we'll do the same plan but 800. Well, of course we can't control that, and you might need to redefine the plan. There might be experiments that perhaps don't quite work out along the way. And of course we know what some of those causes of failure are going to be within formation skydiving. We're going to have to nail our exits. That's going to be key, particularly in four-way when we've got that short working time. So we're going to have to look at sub-terminal flying as well. And teamwork's going to be critical to this. If we're going to do 600 jumps a year, then we need to get on as a team. So we need to select the right people. So we're going to mitigate risk by getting somebody who knows what they're about, a coach, perhaps a skydiving coach, but maybe somebody with teamwork to really help us there. We're going to get onto mental focus. Having our head in the game is going to be critical to this. And I would suggest that meditation will particularly help in this area. And I could do a whole separate seminar on how that could help. But even if you're not into that, visualizing each day is going to be critical to really making sure you've got that mental focus. We're going to look at our finances and our sponsors, perhaps to support this, to mitigate this risk. Perhaps we might even sell our house. And team members have done that in the past to really invest at this level. And physical fitness is going to be critical. If you're going to try and do 600 jumps a year, when you're the second week into a training camp, been going at it for 5 days, you're doing your 100th jump that week. If you're not physically fit, then you're not going to get everything you possibly can from every single jump. And if you want to win, if you want to make this impossible a reality for you, then you're going to need to be physically fit. And of course, we want to stay safe. A canopy course might well be a good idea to invest in. Make sure we can land safely where we want to every single time, even if it's just not for safety, to get back to the drop zone when we have that bad spot, so we can make that back-to-back jump, so that we can get those 600 jumps in. And then we're going to learn from success. Well, I've already talked about skydiving coach, maybe someone with teamwork as well. But we're going to look at other teams. How are they all doing it? How are they doing their block techniques? What are they doing? How are they doing their exits? How can you make that apply to you? What do you need to change? What other experts out there? Are there people that can help us with teamwork? What about a sports psychologist? What about other analysts? People that understand about physics. Are we turning the most efficiently? What about a mathematician, someone who knows about stats? Can they work out where we're really losing time compared to other teams, where we need to up our game? Can we really analyze that data? If you really want to, even if you don't have a team now, even if you only have 100 or 200 jumps, I really believe that if you want to, in 2 years' time, you can win four-way formation skydiving nationals. So I want to talk to you about taking action. I don't want to stand here and tell you, this idea of doing it, and you go out there, forget it all, do nothing about it, and tomorrow this hasn't helped. I want this to be something that can actually help you take action. We've found and defined our impossible, embraced our crazy and our inner child. We're finding a way to redefine that as something that we really can achieve, accepting that along the way it might not always work, our experiments might fail, and we're going to find ourselves going off track early so we can bring ourselves back on. We're going to look at all those risks. We're going to find ways to reduce those risks to an acceptable level. We're going to learn from those that have either done it before or have somehow got some experience that can help us, and learn from those that have no idea what we're doing but might just look at it a different way, might just make a difference. So now, I'm going to ask you to do 5 things, just 5 things to make this a reality for you. Within the next hour, I want you to make your mind up what your impossible is. Now, I appreciate that for you to decide what your impossible is, perhaps your life goal to decide in the next hour might be a little bit too much to ask. But right now, what I'm trying to do is create a habit. What I'm trying to do is make you take action. So have your best guess, and you can change this later. But have your best guess at what this might be. And within the next hour, I want you to make your mind up what that is. And I want you to tell somebody. Now, some of you might have an idea of what it might be. And some of you are probably feeling a little embarrassed or a little bit scared about sharing that with somebody. If that is not you, then you're probably not thinking big enough. I want you to be embarrassed or scared about whatever it is. Make it something really big. Make it something that you really, really want to achieve, that you're not quite sure if you've really got it in you to do it. That's the kind of dream, that's the kind of goal I'm asking you to shoot for here. Then tell somebody, tell a friend, tell someone in your family, tell a stranger, phone somebody up. Come and tell me. Just find somebody in the next hour and tell them what it is. Don't forget that you're already one of those people in that 20% that conquer your fears, that achieve, that create success. But the reality is probably only 20% of you in here will go and actually do this. And probably only 20% of those that start this will follow it through and actually achieve. That's 4% of you. Make yourself one of those 4% and go and tell somebody what it is within the next hour. And then tonight, I want you to get a pen and paper and write it down. Write down this impossible of yours. Not on your phone, but on a piece of paper. Because those that write their goals down by hand are 50% more likely to achieve them. And then when you've written it down, read it out loud. Go back to your hotel room, go and find a quiet corner and read it out loud. And then put it in a place where you will see it in the morning despite your hangover. And then tomorrow, no matter how bad your head is, no matter what time you eventually wake up, pick up that bit of paper and read it out loud again. And then I want you to do one thing that will advance your goal in some way. I want you to do one thing. And it can be something really small. Just do one thing. It might be, putting a post on Facebook asking for team members, or 5 minutes of internet research to see what drop zone you might want to do a training camp at. But just do one thing, and every day forward from this, I want you to at least, even on your worst day, do one thing that might possibly advance your goal and get you towards that dream. And then within a week, I want you to confirm your impossible. So if you're changing your mind from whatever you pick within the next hour, within a week, I want you to confirm whatever that is. I want you to commit to it. Decide what you're going to do so you can take action from that and get your feelings from that. Feel good about yourself. Commit to it and then tell at least 5 people. And some of you might not want to tell 5 people, but the more people you tell, the easier that fear, that embarrassment becomes. So tell 5 people within a week. And then within 2 weeks, I want you to spend a bit more time. I want you to start breaking this goal down, this dream, this impossible, and break it down into chunks. Perhaps you're working out how many training camps you're going to do, what your goals are for each training camp, what you'll do in between those training camps, what you'll do during the winter when perhaps you might not be jumping. And then keep going and develop a plan and break it down further. And suddenly this impossible of yours might not be quite so impossible. And maybe, perhaps, one day, it just might be something that's possible for you. Thank you very much. I'm up here if anyone wants to speak to me afterwards, ask any questions, or you want to come and tell me what your impossible is. I also have my book for sale, hard copies here, £8, or go to that link, take you through to Amazon, and it's a steal at £2.65. Thank you very much.